Hello, and welcome to the Behavior Education Connection, the podcast that works to connect the world of behavior analysis and the world of education. We focus on topics important to behavior analysts who work in the public schools and those who support them. Join us and spend time gaining insights and ideas as our host talks with fellow behavior analysts as well as other experts in the field.
Hello, welcome again to the newest episode of the Behavior Education Connection. I'm your host, Dr. Selena Layden, and I am joined today by two guests, Dr. Christy Park. Hi, Christy.
Hey, everyone.
And Daniel Irwin. Hey, Daniel.
Hello.
And today we are going to be talking about a really fun topic. But before we get into that, if you two don't mind introducing yourself, if Christy, you want to go first, that would be awesome.
Sure. So currently, I am a professor over at George Mason University, but I also wanted to, and I teach primarily in the behavior analysis program. I've been at Mason for about 17 years now. But before then, when I started in special education, one of the first things, maybe not one of the first things, but one of the processes that I got to be involved in was with FBAs. And so it kind of started a long time ago, almost like 25 years ago, when I was thinking about, wow, just the whole process of functional behavioral assessments, that practice working within schools has evolved so much from where I started as a teacher, trying to learn and implement it. And then as a researcher, continuing on with it and still feeling like there's still so much more to learn. So a little bit of background in terms of starting off as a special ed teacher and my role now at George Mason.
And hey, I'm Daniel Irwin. I am a training and technical assistance associate with VCU's Autism Center for Education. A little background about me: been working with students with autism primarily, kind of my whole career. Worked as an IA in a private day school, worked in public schools as a mentor teacher and a BCBA, spent some time at the DOE, and now I'm working VCU ACE.
Well, it's great to have you both. I appreciate you taking time to spend with us today. So the topic that we are going to delve into is this idea of having some kind of problem-solving process. And so I'm going to open it up with the question of why would school-based BCBAs really need to think about having a problem-solving process?
Because having a process takes so much bandwidth away, or it frees up so much bandwidth for the actual creative and thoughtful process, doing the parts of the process, if we kind of have a structure and an organization around how we're going to go through it. And so, when we think about supporting kids who might have executive functioning challenges, or we think about how we live our lives, we sort of do better, most of us, when there's a routine, that we're more productive. We can do things at a higher quality. And so if we apply that sort of general idea to working with kids, supporting teachers, whatever kind of your role is in a school division, that if we have that process down pat, we don't have to worry about as much kind of thinking through the process itself. We go through the steps and can really come to quality outcomes and quality decisions and products and support for people without having to spend as much time sort of trying to figure out what to do next.
I agree, Daniel. And one of the things that I was starting off, I have so much history with that, just with problem solving models, and kind of starting off as a special educator. When we were in public schools, it was, well, this person's going to come and fix it. This person was like this expert driven model. And so when you're thinking about the problem solving model, and it really leads to team-based processes, this level of collaboration, that no one person's going to come and be like the person that knows it all. And everyone knows a piece of it. And so when you're thinking about the problem-solving model, there's so many pieces to understanding how, what, when, where, who, how, and everything in terms of getting it done, that having a problem-solving model really helps to bring everybody to the table to bring something that they can share, either about the context, the environment, about behavior change, about the student. And so, in addition to having a specific process and the steps to follow, it really lends the opens it up to say, this really is, we are all part of this team. Like, we're all going to work on this together.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think one of the things I think about a lot with the problem solving model is a lot of times what I hear from school-based BCBAs, and I dealt with this too, is how do you get teacher buy-in? How do you get people to basically go with you and do the things that you want to do? And I think part of that is built into this as well, because it forces you to think through that bigger picture. It's not just, I have an idea, I'm going to go implement it. It's how does this fit into the structure of the school district? How does this fit into the priorities and the initiatives that are going on? And just, again, forces you to kind of think through what does that look like and how does this impact people? And what is actually needed from people? And so I think it's a great idea to have some kind of process that you follow. Now, I would also argue that I don't know that there's one right process. I don't think it, I don't know that I particularly endorse one process that's going to work. And I don't even know that necessarily sometimes it matters which process you pick, as long as you have a process you're following.
Mhm.
But that said, if someone doesn't have a process, are there ones that you all might recommend as a starting place to consider?
Well, keeping the steps simple is always a good thing, right? If we keep it well, let's follow this. We've got a lot of steps that we have to follow, whether we're in an IEP team or an eligibility team or whatever team that we're on, we're going to be following different steps and procedures. But generally, if we kind of stick to our rule of hand, the number of steps based on the number of fingers that we have. So I seem to have 5 on one side. We're when we're thinking about problem solving models, it's starting off with what's the issue, like what's the problem, kind of looking at starting off with like what are we here for, what's the issue that we're going to deal with, problem, identifying what that problem is, and then the next one when we're thinking about, okay, if this is the problem, let's go into the analysis. That in itself, I mean, people can break out the word analysis into so many other smaller steps there, but keeping that general process of here's the problem, here's the analysis, what are we going to do in terms of that plan development, and is it working? And so kind of walking through those 4 generic questions, and for each of the steps, you could almost break it down and kind of self-check. Well, is that really the issue? Like it seems like we're talking about a lot of things here, but what's the one that we can focus on that's directly related to this? Sometimes just having a process and a way to be able to ask a couple of other questions about the problem. What are some ways that we can figure out more information about that, the analysis? What are we going to do? What's the plan? What are we going to develop? How are we going to do things differently? And then that last piece, I love that last piece. We got to figure out, is it working? Because sometimes we kind of just stop at, here's a great plan. I'm so glad that everybody's here. This is our plan. But then we never kind of come back, and we never and part of that is we do have to have that next step to help us to remember to go back and see if it's working. Like what parts of this is working, and reflecting on that as a process. So simple steps.
Yeah, I totally agree with Christy, that keeping it simple right off the bat kind of helps people get on board and kind of understand, okay, this is what we do. We're going to identify what it is. We're going to figure out why it's happening. We're going to do something about it, and then we're going to see if it's working and make adjustments. And I think if we can stick to that, it again sort of becomes that routine, and it's how you run meetings, and it's how you discuss, your progress and things of that nature. I think you mentioned kind of in the question, Selena, that we work in really complex settings, right? With a lot of different expectations and requirements and variables that we generally don't have much control over. And so I think the more we can kind of control the process of what we're doing, it helps me sort of feel more productive because we've been specific about like what our problem is. And it also helps to kind of keep people focused on the things we can do something directly about. So if we're thinking about pass rates for the SOL, okay, maybe our goal isn't, maybe our problem is we don't have enough kids with disabilities who are passing the SOLs. Okay, that's not like that's not a plan we're going to put together in a meeting and kind of figure out, right? We have to sort of take it back and say, okay, well, what are the contributing factors there, and then what are the ones we can do something about as a team, and identifying what those things are, being really specific about kind of what that problem is and what we would like to see on the, if this plan were to work. Again, helps with the buy-in, but also helps us sort of identify things that are measurable to help guide our progress along the way. Measuring SOL pass rates is year after year after year. Within that year, we might implement a lot of different initiatives that we know are implemented and are working well, and we can celebrate the things we've been able to do, whether they were effective or not in that end goal. We've got that end data sort of help us cycle back and figure out whether, it was an effective strategy or not, and be really specific about it.
Yeah, and just to interject, the SOLs that Daniel was referring to, if you're not from Virginia, are our state standardized tests that we implement. So they measure reading and math and all the things that those tend to do. I think one of the things that I really also appreciate about having a problem-solving model is I think it's really easy to get stuck in different parts of those processes, right? If we're looking at identifying the problem, it's really easy for teams to get stuck in, well, let's just stand around and admire the problem then. We've now identified what it is, or we think we have, and we maybe haven't done as good of a job as we really need to. I mean, I know even when I go into classrooms, a lot of times what I am asked to go in for isn't maybe what the actual problem is. It might be a symptom of the problem, or it might be a tangential problem, but it may not be the core problem that we really need to address. And so, and that's just one example, but having, that process of, okay, we need to get through all of these steps, I think is really helpful so that you don't get stuck in one particular phase.
Very true. Identifying the problem, but also sometimes I think when I'm thinking about my most lively types of meetings that we use the problem solving for, was a lot of emotions also get invested. And so sometimes when you're looking at the process in itself is pretty standard, but when you think about all the things that can go wrong, there's so many things that can go wrong, right? Even with just keeping staff engaged and on task, and really talking about the problem, the issue that we came to meet about, but also in not kind of also maybe framing it in a way to say this is a process. We're not here to say, well, the standardized scores are low when you're pointing at one person, or this behavior is continuing to increase and we're looking at a person, right? It's not anyone's problem. So we kind of open it up to say, like, this is kind of where I guess it's initially established as a process, but it's not a way to blame or kind of distract away for maybe some of the issues. So a lot of fun things can happen in problem solving teams.
I think kind of along those same lines is when you've got, and kind of back to that first question, when you've got that structure and you've established a structure around how you're going to go through the model, it provides kind of an opportunity for everyone to do the thing kind of how their brain works, right? Like some people are those big picture thinkers. Hey, let's look at this vision or our mission of this team and really think about ideally where we want this to go. And then you've got other folks who really can think about and break down a problem and kind of identify where all those barriers are going to be. And so by having that process, you sort of provide that. And when people are familiar with that process, you can provide the opportunity for people to use the way they think, right? The way they kind of work as part of that process, and feeling that there is buy-in and they're contributing to the team. And it's someone who is maybe leading that team, figuring out how to get people engaged in those parts that work really well for them, and setting some of the parameters around, okay, great. We got it. We got a good framework here. We got to start get moving. We got to make some progress. We got to do something. and kind of setting out those next steps.
So, as you're thinking about a lot of this, one of the things that I think is really kind of cool about these problem-solving models is that you can apply them at the individual level or at a small group level or at an entire school or district level, right? It's the process itself is very similar. Now, how you implement that may vary a little bit, but that process can be really similar. And I think for our school-based behavior analysts, this process should probably feel somewhat familiar, right? It's kind of the same process we go through when we're trying to identify interfering behavior and the function of why it's happening. And, we implement something and then we see if it worked. And so, what are your thoughts, though, about if I'm a school-based behavior analyst, I might have a lot of different roles. And so, what are some considerations in implementing a problem-solving process that you would want to give to our audience?
Mhm. And, I think you're alluding to this a little bit when we're thinking about some of the tips and tricks that come along with problem solving, and having the steps already laid out. That is number one. People want, when anybody comes to a team meeting, they want to know, what are we doing? Like, they want to have a process in terms of keeping the time effectively used. And so part of effective team meetings, I guess you could even embed some of the foundational work of effective team meetings and then applying that within, okay, we've got a problem solving process, is looking at just if I was coming in as a BCBA, what is my role on that team? If I, having like looking at and just reflecting on, I am a visitor. Sometimes if I'm coming in as a visitor versus if I am based at that school, I'll have a little bit more knowledge about maybe some of the ways in which the school typically does things. And so when we think about the typically does things, that helps with what Selena was saying was, okay, maybe have come in to meet and talk about a specific individual student problem. But understanding how the school works helps us to see things in terms of systems, helps us to see, how does this team run within their school? How does this team run within the way that the school does this? And so, we're always fighting against time. And so the problem solving process helps with at least getting us on the same page with engagement and productivity. But individual skill sets of how people were coming in and looking at, if we're really truly collaborative and we're not looking at one person to know all the answers, sometimes that whole process can be a little bit more time consuming because we are asking for input. We're hearing all the options that are out there.
And I think, yes. And, kind of thinking through teams that I've been on and kind of having been a school-based behavior analyst, people are looking at you as an expert, right? Like, and so I think a lot of times the expectation is, here they come, they're going to know all the answers and fix the things. And when you lead by asking those questions, right? Like, and sort of modeling that FBA way of thinking, I think it does a number of things. Is one, yeah, you're an expert in some things. You're not an expert in the context of that school, that kid, that teacher, and being able to sort of lead by asking questions and really trying to figure out, okay, narrow down and really identify what the issues are. And there's likely more than one problem, quote unquote problem, right? But also being able to get at the why and helping people sort of categorize, is this because we don't have the materials in the classroom? Is this because I don't have the knowledge, or the teacher or the school doesn't have the knowledge of certain supports? Or is this a motivation issue? Is this, really being able to sort of look through those things and then make the connection to, if it is a knowledge issue, okay, let's do some training. If this is an implementation issue, then maybe coaching is right. And so you're really targeting your actions. So you're not just spinning your wheels trying to provide more knowledge to get people to actually apply stuff. You have to do some coaching and support there, or you all know what I'm talking about. But
yeah,
targeting those interventions to address the hypothesis is always what we're trying to do. And I think the better we are at that, the more they're going to see and sort of be able to buy in. We can reduce the response effort from the people who are involved, because we're not just throwing interventions and strategies and plans out there to see what lands. We're really kind of targeting them. And I think we can get more buy-in that way because we can help people see the connection between what it is we're doing and why we're doing it.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And what you were alluding to, Daniel, was we're thinking about, okay, we're here together. We have a process that we're going to follow. We're here. We're going to collaboratively look at problem solving, whatever problem that we're sticking in the pot for that day. But sometimes when you're walking through and you're leading it, sometimes you're leading, sometimes you're just helping to facilitate. Somebody else is leading. Kind of having some of those expectations already laid out, so they're not always looking at one person or the other person like, why aren't you doing your job? And so some of those healthier team-based essential team meeting, I guess, healthy behaviors in order to function well as a team. Those are some foundational things. But as Daniel was also like, okay, well, we have the 4 steps that we're going to be walking through for problem solving, but in the back of his head, like he already has like maybe a different way to think about behavior change within that organization. Like he's already thinking, okay, well, it doesn't seem like everyone's on the same page about what's important. It doesn't seem like there is consistent maybe training on what's expected. It doesn't seem like maybe the incentives are really quite there, like maybe it really is the lack of resources. Maybe it really, we're here for the action plan, but in the back of your head, you might be thinking about some of the other variables as a BCBA coming in to the table. Do you share all that out? And now I feel like sometimes it might be a little distracting because we only have one set of questions that we're going to walk through. We got to figure out what the problem, where's our data sources? How do we know about this problem? Develop that plan, evaluate, I think sticking through with one process as a team, but in the back of your head, you might have some other things you'd be thinking about just because you are thinking about systems. You have something to add, Daniel?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. It kind of got me back to something I was thinking about earlier. I think as school-based behavior analysts, part of our expertise is in data, right? In understanding and analyzing data. And I think one of the most important things, and kind of what I was trying to say earlier with when I went on that long whatever it was that we don't necessarily have a tool or a mechanism or a pile of data at our disposal that's going to give us what we need to measure at any given time, right? And so the more we can kind of dive into this, I think our expertise really serves a team well, and that we can figure out what data we need to either A, show that there actually is a problem with what it is we're looking at, and B, to be able to show progress. And so we might help develop and create a data collection system that that informs our process all the way through from start to finish. And I think that's one of the things. I'm just going to take it back to like classroom level support. When we're working with students that really have intensive support needs, whether it's behavioral or academic, we have to really fine tune our data collection systems to be able to show progress and show kind of what prompting strategies are working, what reinforcement schedule is working, right? And so it can get very granular in as far as what we do because of maybe the learning needs of the student. And I think when we can identify what not the learning needs, but sort of the team dynamics and how we can show progress, that's such an important thing, because it's easy to get lost in, well, this kind of feels the same as it did 2 months ago. Well, actually, look what we've got in place. We have to have data collection systems that allow us to create and change our interventions and strategies, but also be able to show and communicate progress when we're making progress, to help keep people involved and motivated. And obviously to change our interventions when we're not. But I think having the right data collection system that's giving people the right information at the right time to help keep people motivated can solve a lot of problems as far as, the motivation piece, feeling burnout, those kinds of things.
It leads right into, we probably should even have another segment about problem solving processes done right, problem solving processes gone wrong. And so part of that is like, okay, well, we need to have another meeting for this same problem, but part 2, 3, 4, 5, because we don't have the right data sources, right? We're not looking at the same issue. And so there could be so many stalling points, and nobody wants to, keep designating more time to kind of carve out with everyone there without knowing, without having some of the simple kinds of things like, okay, well, how is the student doing? Like, could we have do we have this grades? Do we have any work samples? Really looking at how can we maybe have a little bit of preparation there, and maybe in terms of some of the data that we can bring in, because I guess the death of all problem solving meetings is assumption. You don't want to be the first 3 letters of that word and bring the team down.
Yeah, the takeaway that I'm really getting from this is, I think one of the things that's really challenging in being a school-based BCBA is not being the armchair expert, right? Like, you don't just come to me and tell me your problem and then I give you the magic wand and then suddenly things are fixed. But rather, I think in this case, the expertise that we bring to the table really is this problem-solving process, right? That we can use our science in a systematic way to go from something's not right to everything is better, and we can show that what we did is what's responsible for that. And that really is that problem-solving process of going through, identifying the problem, looking at our data, analyzing our data, determining the best intervention, implementing that, and then determining the effectiveness of it. And as we do that over and over again, hopefully we get better results every time. But I don't think and what you all are saying is it's not necessarily come to the school-based BCBA, they'll tell you what to do. Mm-hmm. It's that the school-based BCBA really can influence and inform the team to move everybody forward using the data that they have or collecting data that's needed in order to make those really good decisions.
Love that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great so what of the whole episode today.
Yeah.
So with that, are there any last minute thoughts that you all want to share with our listeners today?
You said something, and I don't want to take away from the brilliance and conciseness of your previous statement. I think there's something to be said too about not getting it right? Like, so you mentioned, we're doing these things and we're doing it right and we're seeing progress. I think we need to be, or help teams be, a little more comfortable with, okay, did it? We're seeing that it didn't work. We feel like we've got the right data measurement tools. We feel like we've got these things kind of dialed in and we're doing it. We're not seeing what we hope to see, right? And that's all part of that process. And I think it's especially for some of these internal teams that are working together to create classroom level change or building level or systems level change, being okay saying, it doesn't seem to be moving the needle in the way we wanted it to. What's next, right? And always sort of asking that what's next question. And when we have the process in place, we set the stage, we create an environment that allows people to say, we gave it a try. We have the data to support it, not support it, or continue to not support continuing what we're doing, and making that, creating sort of that environment where that feedback, that information is valued, not just sort of accepted. It's actually valued and kind of moving the process along. That's all. There's learning and failure.
Yeah, I think that's the emphasis on that process too, right? It's not problem solution, which, I mean, that would be great if we could always do that. But just the process of sometimes we get it right, and that's great when that happens. And sometimes we didn't get it quite right, but we're still in the process. It doesn't mean that we necessarily did it wrong or badly. We haven't gotten it yet. We'll get there. All right. Well, Christy and Daniel, thank you so much for being with me today. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, this was fun. We can problem solve again in the future.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And to our listeners, we will see you on our next episode.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Behavior Education Connection. Join us next time for another great conversation about behavior analysis in the schools. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on an episode. Sending out a special thanks to the Virginia Department of Education for supporting our work. We look forward to connecting with you all again soon.